I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love.
What's happening, everybody? This is your big homie, the Armchair Operator, and welcome back to another video. Now today we are going to actually do another versus video. This time we're going to take a look at the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 metal frame competitor, and we're going to put that up against the Walther PDP Pro. Now, if you saw my last versus video, you saw that I put the Walther PDP Pro up against the Springfield Echelon and the Glock 47, and I figured I would look at that as kind of like your duty gun type of space, duty gun, tactical gun type of comparison. Now, the interesting thing about the M&P 2.0 metal frame competitor, at least in my opinion anyway, that's a gun that can flex in the competition world as well as the tactical duty world. So why not put these two together and see which particular gun will come out on top? And like I said, going forward, we're going to have the operator's choice after the versus is all said and done. All right, so we're going to talk about that. And I don't know if I stated this before, but I'll state it again. But so the purpose of the versus videos is to give you all, the consumer, an idea of some of the things that you might want to consider when you're out there shopping for your next firearm. Whether you're talking about home defense, whether you're talking about competition, whether you're talking about duty use. So the whole point of these is to bring two guns together and compare them, you know, in terms of features, accessories, you know, ergonomics, form, fit, and functions, just to help you all make your decision as far as which gun that you would like to pick up. All right, so without further ado, let's head on over to the table and take a look at today's contenders. All right, y'all, we have our two firearms down here on the table. We got the PDP Pro on the left, and we got the Smith & Wesson M&P competitor on the right. But the first thing we're going to do, this is the first thing I always do, we got to verify clear. Now, we have a chamber flag in both firearms, so we're going to remove that, and we're just going to show that this particular firearm is clear, magazine is empty, and this particular gun is clear. We're going to move that one aside, and now it has for the M&P. See, we got the chamber flag in there like so. We're going to remove that and show clear. Okay, magazine clear. Both firearms are confirmed clear. And as always, we are filming in a safe and controlled environment. Okay, now, like always, essentially, we're going to run down the following features to see how the following categories and see how they stack up to one another. So the first category we're going to touch on will be features, then accessories, ammo capacity, ergonomics, portability and concealability, shootability and reliability, disassembly for maintenance or essentially field stripping for cleaning, aftermarket support, the MSRP, and the overall value for the money. And after we get through all those categories, we're going to see which particular one comes out on top. All right, so without further ado, let's dive into the features. All right, y'all, so let's talk about the features. Now, the features actually had to break down into a number of subcategories just to kind of go over everything. And basically, the rules are simple. Whichever one has the most check boxes next to it per feature category will get the overall point for features. So let's start at the top. Let's look at the sights. So I don't know if you can see it, but these are the sights, right? We got standard polymer 3-dot sights with the PDP, and we have the blacked out rear sight on the M&P and the tritium filled fiber optic on the front. So I think that's pretty obvious. The M&P competitor will win the sights category. Now let's talk about the slide serrations. And here, this is where the PDP gains ground. These super terrain slide serrations are very grippy, and grabbing a hold of it is very easy. Now the M&P has some really good slide serrations up front too. Really, you know, got the tapered front here, and then we also have the ledges back here, so it's really good. But if we're talking about overall grippiness, the PDP is just better in my opinion. So the PDP is going to take the slide serrations. Both guns have Picatinny rails underneath, so they both get a point for that. Now let's talk about the ambidextrousness. Now, both of these guns I would say are partially fully ambi. And essentially what I mean by that is, okay, so look, you got an ambidextrous slide catch for the PDP, right? Nice, large, and pronounced. You also have an ambidextrous slide catch for the M&P. Not quite as large as that, but still pretty darn good in its own right. Where I say it's not fully ambidextrous is the magazine release. Now, both of these mag releases are reversible in their respective guns. So, I mean, honestly, they get a tie for that particular category because they're basically kind of rocking the same thing, and they both got a trigger safety dingus, so there's no clear advantage there either. Now, speaking of the triggers, let's talk about the triggers. Now, frankly, the trigger on the PDP is just out freaking standing. This is the performance duty trigger. Now watch. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. That's the take up. That's all you get. Drop it. And here's the reset. Nice, crisp, and tactile. I think that's about maybe a 4-pound trigger, I think. I don't have my trigger gauge handy, but that's really good. Now here's the trigger on the M&P. So here you go. That's the take up. So as you can see, it has more take up than the PDP. Now I will say the trigger break on the M&P competitor is softer than that of the PDP. And that's the reset. Now, one thing I will say about the PDP, even though the trigger resets are very similar between the two guns, the PDP is more tactile. So I actually prefer the trigger in the PDP more so overall than the Smith. So I gotta give the PDP the trigger. Now, both guns are optics ready. And what I mean by optics ready is, do they have an optics cut? Yes, both guns are cut for your optic. Now, here's where the M&P stands above the PDP. This particular gun comes with optics plates out of the box. I mean, in the box. So I could throw an optic on here right out of the gate. I don't have to order any additional plates from Smith & Wesson, which is cool. The PDP, on the other hand, you got to send away for that plate. So in terms of being fully optics ready, that particular feature point goes to the M&P. Now, as far as the barrels go, I mean, both are rocking over 5-inch barrels. I think this is like a 5.2-inch threaded barrel, and I think this is like a 5-inch standard barrel. So I mean, this is a threaded barrel versus a standard barrel. 1 and 1 is 2. You get the idea. The PDP gets the point for that, simply because you can run the PDP suppressed or throw a compensator on it. So there you go with that. And as far as modularity goes, the PDP does have some modularity. Whereas if you have the PDP with the compact grip, you can put this slide and barrel on it and it'll work. I mean, because they have some with shorter grips with full-length dust covers. Let me just caveat that. They have some that have that configuration. I haven't seen any that has a shorter dust cover and a full-length grip. But, I mean, I say that to say Walther does give you options. But, of course, you actually have to own the other firearms to take advantage of it. Whereas the Smith & Wesson, you really don't get any modularity with this particular gun, really. So, I mean, the PDP gets the point for that. So, if you add it all up, basically the Walther PDP gets the point for the features category. All right, so let's head on over to accessories. All right, so now we're going to talk about accessories. And I wanted to try to include the boxes of each particular gun when we're talking about the overall accessories. It's kind of tough, especially with the box of the M&P being so big, but we're going to try to get through this really quickly. So as you can see, this is basically all the accessories that come with each gun, with the exception of the fact that both guns come with a magwell, and the magwells are already installed on each particular gun. So there's a point. I mean, they both get a tie for that. So let's look at the rest of the stuff. So both guns features interchangeable back straps. for all intents and purposes. Now, of course, the Smith & Wesson takes it a little bit further, because these are not just simple back straps. These are also part of the grip, the side grip panels as well. And the Smith just gives you more options. You know, you got your small. I don't know if you can see that, but you got your small there, and you got your mediums. This is the one that comes on the gun from the factory. And then you got your medium large, and I got the large one on the gun itself. Whereas the PDP, they give you three, basically small, medium, and large. These are kind of like a hard, rubbery kind of feeling. They actually feel really good. But that comes with that. Both guns come with a cable lock, by the way. I just don't have mine with my Walther. It's somewhere else. This is the cable lock that comes with the Smith. That's pretty much standard across the board. Now, this has a mag loader, nice little mag loader from Walther. This is cool. Most people just use a mag luller or some other mag loader, or just their thumbs, but it's cool. And also with the Walther, we have a rear sight adjustment tool. So the rear sight on the PDP is adjustable for, I believe, elevation. It might be adjustable for elevation and windage, judging from the looks of it. And of course, you got a little Allen key to take the cover plate off, even though they don't give you the optic. So go figure, right? And we also have an extra recoil spring. Now, this is a heavier recoil spring, and this particular one is set up to be used when the gun is ran suppressed, you know, extra back pressure. So that's what the whole point of this heavier recoil spring is. The recoil guide rod is polymer, by the way, for the PDP, in case you wanted to know. Now, if we go on over to the Smith, so check it out. Now, the interesting thing about the M&P competitor is that when you first buy the gun, it actually has the raised competition style magazine release installed from the factory. And so I actually removed it off of mine, and I'm running the standard magazine release. But you basically get two magazine releases with the gun. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty dope. And this particular tool should look familiar to all of my M&P owners. And basically, this is the tool that sits in the bottom of the back strap. So you just take this tool out, and then you can interchange your back straps. Now, because the competitor has a mag well that comes with the gun, it actually has a different locking tool, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, for when you use a different tool to use when the mag well is installed. So that's why you have an extra tool here. And of course, as you recall, you can use this to activate the sear disconnect when you're field stripping the gun, so that way you don't have to pull the trigger. So it's just another option there, right? And last but not least, of course, you got all the optics placed that your whole heart desires, and the mounting screws to go with them. So, I mean, all in all, I think it's just pretty obvious which particular gun is going to win the features category, and that is going to be the M&P 2.0. Oh, plus this is a nice, larger and better box than the PDP. But anyway, the point for the accessories category goes to the M&P 2.0 competitor. Now, on the ammo capacity. All right, so ammo capacity, essentially I laid out all the magazines that each particular gun comes with. The M&P 2.0 competitor comes with 4 17-round magazines, while the Walther PDP Pro comes with 3 18-round magazines. So just going by the numbers, the PDP, you can carry a maximum of 54 rounds on your person out of the box, whereas the M&P, you can carry a total of 68 rounds on your person out of the box. So the clear winner here is obviously the Smith & Wesson M&P. Now, let's talk about ergonomics. All right, so ergonomically speaking, I gotta give that point over to the M&P. Reason why, this particular gun just fits my hand a lot better than that of the PVP. Even though I love the grip of the PDP, but what I like about the M&P is, like, when I really get in on this gun with the nice two-hand grip, my hands just kind of like sink into it, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I will go as far as to say, like, ergonomically speaking, this is probably the most ergonomic pistol that I own. You know, I can really just get in there, and the gun is just, it's just fun. It feels really good. Now, the PDP is really good too with the beaver tail. The beaver tail here is, or rather the undercut, is actually more pronounced than that of the Smith. Plus the soft rubber recoil pad, not recoil pad, I'm sorry, backstrap really makes this feel good in the hand. So now where this kind of falls short as far as the M&P versus the M&P in my opinion is this right here. So this is actually the takedown button. And when I am holding this and I'm shooting, my thumb has a tendency of rubbing up against this, and I get blisters pretty easily from that with the PDP. That's my only real gripe about this gun from an ergonomic standpoint. Now, I could always change my grip to put my thumb more so there, so that is also an option too, but overall, I just kind of prefer the ergonomics of the Smith & Wesson. The other reason why I prefer the ergonomics of the Smith & Wesson is that because of this little bulge right here, right? That palm swell. Few guns have a nice palm swell like the M&P line. And that's one thing that I really, really enjoy about the M&P line. So, ergonomically speaking, that point is going to the Smith & Wesson M&P. Now, let's talk about portability and concealability. All right, in terms of portability and concealability, I mean, let's just get the elephant in the room as far as concealability goes. Really, these particular guns are, you could conceal carry them, but let's just face facts. These guns are not really meant for concealed carry. But I will say that I would give the point for concealability to the M&P, mainly because it has a slightly shorter barrel than that of the PDP. And speaking as someone who has concealed carried this PDP Pro at times, this tends to dig into my hip a bit, so it gets a little uncomfortable walking around with this digging into your side all day long, whereas this doesn't really dig in so much. So that's really cool. So in terms of concealability and essentially all other things being equal, right, you know, the grip lengths are pretty comparable, the mag wells are pretty comparable. The slide is noticeably thinner than that on the M&P, but that doesn't really affect its concealability. Really, it's more so barrel length and grip length, if anything else. So anyway, M&P competitor gets the concealability. Now, in terms of portability, essentially what I did for that is I weighed each particular firearm fully loaded, and the numbers are this. The M&P competitor weighed in at 38.2 ounces, 0.02 ounces to be exact, with a fully loaded magazine, 17-round magazine, while the PDP Pro weighed in at 35.31 ounces with a fully loaded 18-round magazine. So the PDP Pro gets the portability point simply because it comes in at a few ounces lighter than that of the Smith fully loaded. So that's basically how that category wraps up. You know, each particular gun gets a point. The PDP gets the point for portability, while as the competitor gets the point for concealability. Now let's move on to the next category, which is shootability and reliability. All right, so for shootability and reliability, things get kind of interesting here. So first thing, let me just say both guns have been reliable throughout. I have over 1,000 rounds on both guns, and I haven't had any issues out of either one of them. So that's the easy part. Now, when it comes to shootability, basically, the PDP outshot the M&P 2.0. Or rather, I'll say that I outshot myself with the PDP versus the M&P 2.0 metal frame competitor. And the main reason for that is the trigger on the PDP. Now, one thing about the trigger on the Smith is one of those type of triggers that I kind of have to reacclimate myself to. And quite frankly, I have not shot my M&P competitor all that much lately just because I have a whole bunch of other things that I need to do. And I really haven't got a chance to take this particular gun out and shoot it. On top of the fact that I shot the PDP for the previous Versus series that it was featured in. Now, That being said, the trigger in the PDP is a bit more forgiving in that aspect because it has that crisp break and that crisp reset. Whereas on the Smith, it has more take up and the reset is not as tactile as that on the PDP. So as you can see, the groupings for the M&P were wider than that of my groupings on the PDP. So I usually just do like 2 quick magazines, and the results pretty much speak for themselves as far as how tight the groupings are. But I decided to run just a second round as a bonus. And even when I did that one, I was tighter with the PDP overall, I would say. Even though if you look at it with the Smith was a bit better in a sense, but I missed a few shots with the Smith. So that's why overall I got to give the shootability portion over to the PDP, because simply put, I was a better shot with it. So anyway, let's move over to the disassembly for field stripping portion. All right, so when it comes to field stripping these guns for maintenance or to clean them, the Smith & Wesson gets the point there. Reason being because it has this nice little handy takedown lever versus the button style on that of the Walther here. I prefer this style for a multitude of reasons. Not only is it a little easier, but it's easier to manipulate if the gun is really dirty, or if there like dirt, sand, or gravel, or anything like that in the frame of the gun, versus say this particular style on the Walther. I mean, both guns are easy to field strip, to clean, but I mean overall, like I said, I prefer the lever on that of the M&P. So I'm going to give the point for disassembly for maintenance to the M&P. Now, when it comes to aftermarket support, I mean, both guns are pretty well supported in the aftermarket, but I think Smith & Wesson just takes the advantage here, simply because their M&P line has been out for way longer, and also this particular platform is used by law enforcement agencies like all over the doggone country. So I don't know if the PDP is being used by law enforcement. It might be, but I know for a fact that the M&P line is. So that basically gives the M&P the edge in terms of aftermarket support. Now, when it comes to the MSRP, believe it or not, the PDP actually takes that one. And the MSRP for the PDP, I believe, is like $7.99. Well, street price, and it was like $7.99. Out the door, I think it was like around $8.50-ish for me or something like that when I first bought it. Whereas the M&P 2.0 competitor, I believe it was around $8.49. I think that's kind of where it is now, somewhere in that neighborhood. It might be lower depending on when you see this video or where your local area is, so those prices can vary. But the long and the short of it is the PDP Pro was actually a bit cheaper than the M&P metal frame competitor here. So the MSRP point has to go to the PDP. Now, in terms of the value for the money, this is a kind of a difficult one to judge between these two guns, simply because both guns are feature packed. Good triggers, great ergonomics, slide serrations, mag wells, a lot of different things. And I think, like I said, I think that it's just kind of hard to judge. Granted, the Walther has a better trigger than that of the Smith, but the Smith brings a lot to the table. Now, granted, you could get some Performance Center Smith & Wessons, the polymer versions, for way cheaper. So, I mean, there is that aspect of it too. So if you were to look at that versus the Walther, I would say that the M&P would be better in that category, in that regard. But with the metal frame version, I mean, like I said, it's kind of hard for me to judge. Nothing really stands out one versus the other in terms of the value for the money portion. So, I mean, that being said, I got to kind of call it a wash in that particular category. So, I mean, neither one will get a point there, because like I said, neither one really stands out above the other in that regard. So with all that being said, let's see where we're at score-wise. Okay, to recap, the features category goes to the Walther PDP, while the categories for accessories, ammo capacity, and ergonomics all go to the M&P 2.0 competitor. For portability, the point goes to the Walther PDP Pro, while concealability goes to the M&P. Now, for shootability and reliability, the PDP gets the point for the shootability portion, and both guns have been reliable throughout, so both guns will get a point for that, basically making that a tie. As far as disassembly goes, the point goes to the M&P 2.0 competitor, as well as the point for aftermarket support, while the MSRP point is going to go to the PDP Pro. And the value for the money is just, like I said, one doesn't stand above the other in terms of the value for the money. So it's basically a tie between those two. So I'm not going to give them a point for that category. Which brings us to a grand total of 5 points for the PDP Pro and 7 points for the M&P 2.0 competitor, making the M&P the winner of this versus. And we're back. So I think that was a pretty interesting versus. I mean, overall, I'm satisfied with the results. Like I said, I really enjoy both guns, and both guns are great shooters. But I just feel as though that the M&P 2.0 competitor just edges out the Walther a little bit in a few categories. But the Walther is a pretty solid gun too. Now, as far as which one I would pick between the two, like if I were to run a competition or a duty gun, the operator's pick, and here's the thing about that. Here's the thing. The PDP has the better trigger, hands down. Like that's not even up for debate. And with the ergonomics of the PDP, it's really easy to just stay on target, stay flat, and run the gauntlet with the PDP. I mean, the trigger is basically built for that. Okay, so we have that. Now the PDP is a solid choice. Even so, I would still pick the M&P competitor for that particular role as far as a competition gun. The main reason being, this gun has a much more of a natural point for me, and it's also a more ergonomic gun. It also has better sights on top of it, and that is one of the things that's going to be important, especially if you're talking about a competition gun, the sights. And not only that, this thing is optics ready out of the box, so I can just throw an optic on there, whether whether you competition shooters out there, whether you want to drop an SRO on there, or whether you want to drop something else on there, maybe a 507 comp. You can drop that right on this particular gun right out of the box, and you could just hit the ground running. And you could train up on this trigger and be solid with this trigger. Like, there are competition shooters out there right now that are killing the game with the stock trigger. And I also hear that Apex released the trigger for the metal series of the M&P. So you drop an Apex trigger in this thing, oh man, it's lights out. Like, I'm just saying, it's lights out. But like I said, the biggest thing for me would be the ability to put an optic on and out of the box. It has superior sights than that of the PDP. And I just like the way this feels in my hands versus the PDP. And you get more magazines with this particular gun than that of the PDP. So that's why the M&P metal frame competitor would be the operator's choice in this video. So what do you guys think? Would you pick the M&P competitor over the PDP Pro, or would you pick the PDP Pro over the M&P? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know. Let's get this discussion popping, y'all. If y'all enjoyed today's video, please let me know by hitting that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on that bell notification so that way y'all can get notified when I drop new content. You know, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And this is your big homie, and I'm out. Peace.